Welcome back to episode 6 of the Shotgun Studio podcast. My name's Keith. I'm your host. And as you can see in front of me, I did it again. If you are watching on YouTube, there is a new microphone sitting on the table. Unfortunately, I'm not using it. And I'll tell you why here in a second. But it is the Neat King Bee 2 that I wanted to try out. It was on sale for, I think, $120. But then with some rewards points that I had, it ended up being like $35. So I'm like, well, $35 for this microphone that I had on my radar. Why not? I mean, yeah. So I tried it and the other day and it sounded great, no issues. And I wanted to record this podcast using that microphone. And I plugged it in and I was getting all this noise. It sounded like I was in a tornado or something, so much noise. And so I tried switching out cables to see if that was, tried different inputs in the Rodecaster, couldn't figure it out. So I'm like, well, just to make sure to see if it's the mic, I plugged in the Neat Worker Bee, the original one, which I have here as well, and dead silent. So I don't know if there's something wrong with this microphone. I haven't dropped it or anything since the first time I tried it. So definitely need to see or potentially send it back or something, which sucks because it sounded really good when I tried it the first time and just put it on the shelf and plugged it in. And man, I was going to see if I could maybe record around it, but no, that noise, it sounded like I was recording out in a windy day or something. So unfortunately I got to probably send it back and hopefully get a replacement because it is awesome. And one reason I did get it is because my wife is potentially wanting to get into narrating audiobooks, because I told her she's been on my main podcast a couple times or 2 or 3 times now. And I told her she's got a great voice for that and she loves listening to those anyway. So why not try it out? And Ashley could use my Lewitt 240 Pro mic. You know, I've had my eye on this one anyway and heard it's really good. So I wanted to try it. So I got it and now having some issues. But you can see if you're watching on the YouTube video version, I have the Neat Worker Bee 1 sitting next to it. So between the 1 and 2, the design's completely changed. The 1, obviously you have the more bee themed where it's black and yellow and more kind of just square mic for the bass. The 2 that they came out, once Neat went through that whole process of being bought out, they kind of revamped these microphones and changed the look of them. They still try and go with the bee theme, like the shock mount's called the Beekeeper, but completely different style. So instead of the squared off body there, it's round, very long on the King Bee 2, but it's all black. And I don't know, the packaging that the original ones came in, I know nobody really doesn't care about packaging, but it was really cool. I did a video on the Neat Worker Bee, and it comes in like this reusable crate and all this stuff. Comes with like everything. And it was really cool. You really don't get that with the new ones. You just get like another big box with just foam insert and stuff like that. But not a big deal, like not a deal breaker or anything. But you can definitely tell that when the company changed hands, they were trying to, reduce costs, which, why not? But yeah, so it's definitely obviously looks different if you're looking on YouTube. So it's all black versus the black and yellow, and circular versus the squared body. And the King Bee compared to the Worker Bee, definitely a size difference. The Worker Bee is a medium condenser mic and the King Bee is a large condenser mic. So you can definitely see the difference there. The Worker Bee sounds great. I have had no issues. It's one condenser mic, one of my favorites, probably second to the Lewitt 240 Pro. As much as I would love to get a Neumann microphone, like even the entry level one is like $700 to $800, and then you get the mid tier one that's $1,400 to $1,500, and then you get the U87, which is like the studio mic of all mics for like $4,000, and that doesn't include the shock mount. So definitely don't want to go there. And as good as those mics sound, they aren't really meant for the home studio that I have here, just in my office, which is a spare room in our house, not really acoustically treated. So those mics are very sensitive. So they would pick up a lot of room noise and just stuff that is just other noise that's coming around here. Whereas some of these less expensive mics that are more, for what we're doing, kind of help reduce some of that room noise, and they're not quite as sensitive. So in my setup, it would sound, and it did sound really good. So I figured that would be really good for her. Obviously, we do some more acoustic treatments if she would to do that voiceover, but just sitting here in the room, having it set up like I'm sitting now, it sounded fine. Didn't have, a lot of room noise. These do have like really low self noise, which is good. But for whatever reason, when I plugged this one in, there was a lot of noise. So definitely hope I can get that fixed because I do really like that mic. It's not really, I mean, you could use it on videos, but as you can see, it's sitting in front of me. Unless I probably have to have it off to the side a little bit. Otherwise, it's just going to completely block my face. It's heavy, so I don't know how well it would do on these boom arms. Yeah, I think I could probably do it, but it's getting to it might not be able to hold it. So that's why I put it on this desk stand right here and was just going to do that. And it's kind of the perfect height right there. But yeah, but again, I plugged in the worker bee. That worked fine. Wasn't the cable, wasn't the Rodecaster. So definitely going to reach out to Neat and see if they've had issues with that or if it's something I need to return. And hopefully I could just swap it out and not have to pay any more because that deal is, I can't get that deal again. So it would suck having to pay the regular price if I had to return it. So we'll see. So yeah, I know I said I had the gear acquisition syndrome, which I was doing really good since the last podcast. I think that's probably the only thing I've bought since that episode. So I've been trying to use what I have and trying to make my production better with using the equipment I've currently have without buying any others. But man, I was excited when I got basically that $170 microphone for $35, and now something's wrong with it. So I digress. So what I wanted to talk about on this episode, well, I guess I should say the mic that I am using. I already had this on a boom arm just sitting off over here. I was going to swing it off camera, but decided to just swing it over and use this as my secondary option. It's the Rode Pod mic. I do have the big aftermarket pop filter on there. I think it sounds better with this. If I take it off, it still sounds good, but I think you get a more podcasty sound with this on. Obviously, it helps with a lot more plosives, so you could keep it closer to your mouth and not have to worry about those plosives. So again, Rodecaster Pro as the interface and using the Rode Pod mic on the Rode Pod mic setting in that Rodecaster Pro. But what I wanted to talk about today is out of all the gear I have, and I'll kind of go over my setup that I use in the studio. I don't do all my videos in here. Obviously for this channel I do, but my main channel, I do some motorcycle related content. So obviously that kind of stuff I do either in the garage or I'm out on the bike with the GoPro. But most videos and all the podcasts that we do are right here using this equipment that's in this room. And there's two pieces of gear or equipment that I honestly don't think, I could live without them, but they make my life so much easier in the production side of things that it would be hard to go back to the workflow without using these, just because it from recording the video to the editing and getting everything up, it just makes the workflow process a lot easier. And especially doing a video podcast, two of them, it'd be really difficult to do. I could do it. I used to do it without these equipment, but it just makes your life easier. So out of everything that I have in here, these are the two that I rely on the most and use for almost every video, like I said, unless I'm doing it elsewhere. My setup currently is, if you're watching on YouTube, you can kind of see what's in front of me, and I'll explain what's behind the camera and everything. But on the desk, I have just a Husky workbench. It is nice because I had a smaller table, and with our main podcast, we try to fit anywhere from 2 to 4 people. And this desk, with as long as it is, I can fit 4 people around it and still keep everybody in frame. And it's adjustable height, and it's a nice big work area to have the desk equipment I need and to do any product showcase or anything like that. So definitely love it. It's on wheels, so I wheel it around all the time to change things up, or if I need to vacuum or anything. So that definitely helps. On the desk, I have my laptop, which is a MacBook Air, and then I have obviously the Rodecaster Pro. I have these boom arms. I have two of them actually mounted to the table. And then if I have four guests, these desktop stands that they use. I have a monitor mounted to the table as well, and I have it sitting just off screen to where I use Ecamm Live to basically edit everything as I go. And so I have that on the table. And for my camera, I have the Sony ZV-E10, which is awesome. I had to get a new phone, so I got the 14 Pro Max. The camera on that is awesome. It's got really good built-in stabilization. And with the previous model cameras, it was really hard to get that bokeh in the background, that blurry background. Well, it actually has a cinematic function to where you can get that on the new 14s, which is awesome. So if you want that without having to spend a lot of money on an actual dedicated camera and you already have that phone, you can get that blurry background with the 14s. So it's really nice. I'll probably try that out on some videos and maybe do a comparison between the iPhone 14 Pro Max with that cinematic camera mode on versus the ZV-E10 with the Sigma lens to see, if there is a difference or not. I'm hoping that there is, and there should be, just because I think you can get a better picture quality out of the Sony. It's got a better sensor, and I think the color profile out of the Sony is better too. So I have the Sony ZV-10 on just a tripod in front of me, probably about, I don't know, 5 to 6 feet away. And then I have an HDMI cord going from the camera to since this is a MacBook Air, the 2020 version, I have to use dongles because it doesn't have any USB ports. So I have like a large dongle that's actually mounted to the desk, and I have everything going into there. And then whatever's running into that dongle is going into my computer. In order to get the 4K footage from the Sony, I have to use an Elgato Cam Link, because if I don't use that and just use a standard USB cord, which you can completely do, and stream it that way, it's only going to get 1080. So in order for me to get the 4K video that the Sony produces into my computer, I do have to use the Elgato 4K Cam Link. So that definitely helps. Not necessary. I don't use it when I hook up my two phones for the cameras for secondary angles for the main podcast. I just have those going in through USB. I'm not sure if those come in at 4K or 1080, but still looks good. And I don't use those too often, but enough to change up the angles a little bit on that podcast with other guests. So those are mounted to other tripods. I actually have two C stands with lights. So I got one overhead. So I have one right here that's kind of going overhead, and the light is like right above me. And it's just a newer LED kind of barn door light. But I have a round softbox around those to really help soften the light. So I got the one above me, and also mounted to that is I have a mic stand that I took the bottom off of, and I mounted the rest of the mic stand to the C stand and have a shotgun mic mounted to that. So if I don't want a microphone in the shot, then I can just easily move that down, and I have the shotgun mount right above me, just out of frame. And then that way I don't have to use a microphone or headphones or anything like that. So that's nice. And when I don't use it, I just kind of lift it up out of the shot a little bit more. And so C-stands are really nice, especially for lighting and adding on some other things. This other C-stand, I have another light on to where it's just off at an angle towards me. And I have a diffuser on that one as well. But I actually have an iPhone holder mounted to that C-stand. So that way I'm not having another tripod in that area, because with the two C-stands and three tripods, it was getting a little much to try and maneuver back there to like turn on the Sony and stuff like that. So to reduce some space, I wanted to try this mount that actually mounts to the C-stand itself and clears up a lot of room. So it's nice. So I might do that with the other iPhone camera as well, just so I'm not tripping over a bunch of stuff. But I try to keep the cable management as best as I can. I have like all the chargers and everything mounted underneath the desk as well. And I have a power strip that I just plug everything in there. So So that kind of helps me when I don't have the cameras hooked up. I can move the table around without having to unplug everything. So that's nice. And then I just got some accent lights in the background that you can see. I got another light stand off to the side that's shining that red light that kind of comes out pink in the shot, but it's supposed to be red. It looks red when you're in person. And then on the shelves here, I just have another kind of blue light and some other stuff in the background just to add accent lights. But that's pretty much how I have my setup. I have a Stream Deck. I don't think I mentioned that sitting on the desk as well to switch between the cameras when I have those. And on the main podcast, I usually share a screen or something else so I can switch between those and helps a lot. So instead of using like an ATEM Mini or something like that, Stream Deck is good enough for me and works well in Ecamm Live. So that's pretty much the studio setup and all the equipment I use on top of obviously the microphones that I change out all the time. But the two pieces of equipment that, like I said, I couldn't really live without now, or makes my video production and podcast production so much easier, are obviously the Rodecaster Pro 2. And I know it's not like a physical product, but Ecamm Live, it's a software that you still have to pay a subscription for. So it's still part of the gear I use, I guess. So not something physical, but still part of it. So those two things make both doing YouTube videos and then either audio or video podcasting so much easier. If you've ever used the Rodecaster Pro 1 or 2, you'll know that you can have up to 4 mics. So we usually have up to 4 people on our podcast, and just having that, everything running through that is so much better. I like the 2 better because the Rodecaster Pro 1 had a lot of headphone noise, and it didn't come out on the actual recording, but it was hard to dial in the microphones and everything because you weren't quite sure what was going to come on the final product with that kind of hissing noise. And especially as you kicked up the gain in the microphones, it became more prevalent. It was pretty annoying. And then since I use the dynamic mics that are kind of gain heavy, like the pod mics and the Shure SM7B, those are pretty gain heavy. So I needed to use a Triton Fedhead, which is a gain booster, to get that extra gain and kind of so it's not so noisy. And it's just more stuff that was connected, and I don't know, something could have happened. I didn't like having the Triton Fed heads kind of sticking out of the Rodecaster. I could have mounted them any other way, but it's just more stuff that wasn't necessary. So the preset preamps in the Rodecaster Pro 2 are so much better. There is zero noise, and whatever I hear in my headphones is exactly what comes out in the final production. Now I have some Rode NT100, I think, or NTH, whatever they are, the Rode's only headphones that they make, and they are so good. I have a couple other headphones. I got an Amazon pair, and then the lowest tier, the Audio Technica headphones, and I've tried out all 3. The Rode headphones obviously sound the best, so I use those for myself since I'm monitoring the volume of everything, and give the other ones to my guests because they just need them to hear everybody. But honestly, these headphones, they're pretty accurate. So whatever I hear in these headphones, like I said, is what's going to go out in the final production. So it's definitely nice to have a good quality set of headphones if you are doing some sort of podcast or using a mic. Even if you're not using the Rodecaster, if you're using a Fosse Rite or anything else, having a good pair of headphones is definitely going to help you monitor your volume and get everything kind of dialed in. You could use the cheaper ones, but you don't get the right sound, and they might not be as like closed back and comfortable, especially if you're going to be doing like an hour-long podcast like we do. So a lot of things come into the headphones that could change the way they feel and what you're actually hearing. So that could, you may, have your audio interface set to what it sounds like in your cheap headphones, but then it sounds completely different or a little off in the final product when you listen to it through something else. So, but again, the Rodecaster Pro, I can monitor everybody's volume, and I sometimes have to change it depending on if they move away from the mic or get quiet. Have sound pads. So our intro to both podcasts, I have preset to that. So literally all I have to do, hit a sound pad, and it plays the intro and outro automatically. I don't have to edit that in Final Cut Pro or anything like that. One cool thing about the Rodecaster Pro 2 is it does have, I guess, this talkback function. So if I have to say something to somebody, one of my co-hosts on the podcast or a guest, but I don't want that to show up on the recording, I just hit this button and I can say like, hey, move closer to the mic or something. And they'll hear me in the headphones say that, but it won't actually be picked up on the final recording. So that's something that's really nice and cool too. And just the fact that I can either record directly to an SD card on the Rodecaster or also into Ecamm, which I'm doing, or like GarageBand or anything like that. And there's so many different things that you can do with the Rode. If you're into music, you can use that for mixing. Obviously, I don't do that, but just having those sound pads that you can add different sounds, and if like you want to add effects or just like cool little things, you can do that. It just makes, if you are doing a podcast, it makes life so much easier. If I didn't have the podcast, probably wouldn't need it as much for videos. I could get away with, using a USB mic. That would be fine. But since I do technically have two podcasts, the Rodecaster Pro 2 is just something that I probably couldn't do without. I could, but it would be a little more difficult. So and then like people are like, well, I want to get the Rodecaster Pro, but I can't afford it. So I want to get something similar. I mean, there's things that come close to it, but I know especially the second one, it's $600 to $700, which is not cheap, but it's worth it, especially if you're going to, do a lot of audio stuff. The Fosse rights that come in way under are okay. Like they're good if you have like one or two microphones, but it doesn't have all the features and bells and whistles that the Rodecaster does. The Zoom, my buddy bought the Zoom P-Track 4, whatever it's called, and it's kind of like a handheld version of the Rode, but it still can't do everything the Rode does. It has like a small little screen, and it's hard to see the levels and everything. And I mean, we used it on a traveling podcast and it worked just fine. But if I was using that every day for all our podcasts, we do one a week on my main channel. So that would make it a little more difficult. And it just, again, doesn't have all the features. I don't know. I just really love the Rodecaster Pro. You can buy the first ones for a lot cheaper now because obviously the 2's out. So you can find people selling them because they've upgraded to the 2 for pretty cheap, or just even through other websites. They've definitely like gone way down in price. So there's nothing wrong with the Rodecaster Pro 1. It's just if you can deal with the headphone noise and are okay with getting the Triton Fed Hedge or some sort of cloud lifter or gain booster, if you have those gain heavy mics, it's just something that another expense that you have to purchase with the Rodecaster. So that's something you want to keep in mind. If you have those mics, you may need to spend additional money. But since this has come out, I have noticed that at least the Triton Fed Heads have come down like in price, which kind of sucks because I paid, $80 to $90 after tax for 3 of them each. So out of $80 times 3 plus the cost of the original Rode. And then you have to buy the dust cover separate, or you could just wait, save your money and buy the Rodecaster Pro 2. Don't have to worry about any cloud lifters or gain boosters because the preamps on this are so good that if you hook a gain booster up to this, it actually introduces noise and makes it worse. So it's one of those things that if you think this will help your production and be very beneficial to you, it's almost worth just kind of saving up and waiting and getting this versus spending the money on something cheaper, then eventually upgrading to the Rode. So then you're spending not only the money on the first thing, then you're also spending the $700 on the Rode. And it's kind of like a waste of money because then you're stuck with the cheaper thing and you could sell it, but you're losing money on that. So it's up to you. I like it. It helps me in all forms of videos. I use it in just normal YouTube videos. If I'm doing something like the shotgun mic, I have the shotgun mic going into the Rodecaster Pro, and it just, that way I can, put the headphones on, test it out, and then I take the headphones off, do the video. So definitely use it in videos where you don't even see a microphone in. So definitely helps with that. There's a pause button. So if I wanted to pause right now, I could just pause and then hit resume and you're good to go. Tom Buck does a lot of videos on not only the first one, but this one. And he goes into a lot of details with the features. That would take way too long. Plus, I don't know all the features, but there's a whole bunch of different stuff you can do in the Rodecaster Pro 1 and 2 that I don't even use, but you can do all sorts of effects and stuff like that. Like you can basically adjust your sound to how you want without having to do it post-production. So that helps. You can plug in guitars and basses and everything and make tracks. It's pretty cool. So again, this is probably one of the two that I could not live without. And then the other one, which is not physical, Ecamm Live. So every video and every podcast I do, unless it's somewhere else, but 90% of the stuff I do is in this studio setup, I use Ecamm Live. And unfortunately, it's only right now for Mac users. So if you have a Windows PC, I don't think it's available yet. I don't know if it's ever going to be available, but you never know. Fingers crossed. So if you do have a Mac, it's awesome. You can get different tiers of the subscription. I have the Pro, which is the highest one, and it's like $40 a month, but well worth it because I can edit an entire video through Ecamm as I'm recording it, or even a podcast, and then just kind of upload it into Final Cut Pro, maybe tweak a couple things, and that is it. If you do have it hooked up to your computer or a separate monitor, you can actually monitor every camera that you have hooked up. You can switch between cameras, and it goes well, like I said, with the Stream Deck. So you don't necessarily need the Stream Deck. You can do everything just by clicking on it with an Ecamm. The Stream Deck makes it easy, so that way, like on our podcast, I just have the Stream Deck sitting in front of me and I just press the buttons and it automatically changes. Whereas if, I could just look over and click the buttons on here, but then you obviously notice me doing that on the video. So if I have the switcher, I can just press that button right in front of me. Nobody knows I'm even doing that. So that helps. And then I can switch between scenes, hit pause, hit record, show picture in picture, all sorts of things that you could customize to use the Stream Deck with Ecamm Live. Stream Deck even works with the like OSB stuff like that. So like right now, you can see me looking off screen. I'm looking at my actual monitor that's mounted to the desktop and just kind of seeing everything. So I got sound levels where I have the Rodecaster Pro selected. So I'm monitoring the sound levels through there as well. I can't see every separate microphone. It's just the one input of the Rode. So, and then any sound effects and stuff, there's different things you can do. And then with the camera, so with the Sony camera, I only have one camera hooked up. I can zoom in and out without having to move the camera, which is nice. And I don't lose any video quality really. And then I can adjust, like here, I can move it around and kind of reframe myself if I wanted to. I can change all sorts of picture settings. You can add a LUT. So I actually recently added Tom Buck's LUT for Ecamm Live, and it kind of brightens up the colors a little bit, I think, so it looks better. So really, if you have a LUT preloaded or adjust your settings, then that way you don't have to do any color grading in your post-production. It's all done through Ecamm Live. You can do different camera options. You can do a blur effect, black and white. You can mirror. You can rotate the cameras. Like earlier today, I did a video where I had a second camera, my iPhone, overhead, and I had to rotate it because it was kind of backwards. So I just hit rotate, and then it did it right. And then that way I don't have to mess with that in post-editing. Man, all sorts of different things. I can add scenes, so I can basically, when I do an intro to our podcast, I have the intro, which is on the main one, 24 seconds. Forget what the length is on this one, but I have it preloaded as a scene. And so basically when I'm ready to go, I hit that button. It plays the actual video version of the intro. And then I just on the Rodecaster Pro 2 at the same time, I hit the sound pad with the sound of music for the intro, and it just plays. It automatically, once the intro is done, switches over to camera 1, which is my main scene, and then I go. And then if I want to share, my desktop or screen, I can just hit screen share, and then it pops up my desktop if I want to show something on there. So really, you're doing your editing as you're going, which is so nice, especially for like an hour-long podcast. That way I don't have to go through, watch the whole thing, change camera angles in there, and color grade. I don't have to add the intro or anything like that. If I had an outro, I don't have to add that in post-editing. I can do everything in here, which is super nice. And again, since I have the LUT now loaded, I never did color grading, but because I can't figure it out yet. But now I don't have to worry about that anymore because this LUT looks really good with the Sony camera. And it even made my 2 iPhone cameras look better too, because when I switched between the Sony and my iPhone cameras, there was a note, you could definitely tell I was using a different camera. And with the studio lights, it kind of blew out the frame a little bit. I didn't know how to fix that. So once I added the LUT, it actually fixed it to where it's not exactly the same picture as in colors as the Sony, but it's pretty close, and it really got the light issue fixed. So it's not like one person over here is overexposed because of where the light is, and the other person over here in this angle is dark because of the light. It really fixed that, which is nice because then I don't have to worry about that at all. And then just having a screen to where you can monitor yourself is really nice. Like I just have it up here and I can see, if I'm in frame, if my camera stays in focus, if anything changes, I just look over and I'm like, okay, I need to fix this, or, change something out, zoom out. If I need to get a bigger, wider shot, I can just monitor everything. And they've actually upgraded it to where now there's basically a built-in camera switcher. There was one already to where you can just click between the previous screen at the bottom and select each one, but it was really small and you couldn't really see what was going on too much in that camera. Well, now they added another box to where, yeah, it's a camera switcher, but it shows a preview of all cameras that you have hooked up. So if I had all 3 hooked up, it would show camera A, which would be Sony, B, and C. And I can see those in a different screen. So that way I know what is on, say, camera B. And when I'm ready to switch over to that one, bam, I switch over to it either using the Stream Deck or I just click on it and Ecamm Live, go there. Oh, something cool is on camera, C, click on that. And just makes it so much easier. With this new update, if I want to not have to worry about switching cameras and I just want all 3 to record separate files, you can do that now, because it used to be originally you couldn't record every camera separately. It was just all one production. So if I switched over to a different camera and then came back and then like, oh, later on, I didn't want that, B camera in there or whatever, I couldn't change that. Now there's a setting in here where you can do a separate recording off of every camera. So not only are you doing your main camera recording to where you're switching angles, doing all this stuff, it's also simultaneously recording everything that's going off camera, like B and C. Right now it's just A and B, but they're going to eventually add C, and I think maybe you can do. I don't know. But right now, since I only have one camera, it's only showing me 2 options, but it can record multiple cameras, the whole footage of whatever you're recording. And then that way, in post editing, if you want to add in, say, camera B somewhere else where you didn't change over to that camera in your normal recording, you can do that. Whereas previous to this, it didn't do that unless you were recording separately on that camera, which I don't. So I don't record anything to the SD card in my Sony right now. Basically, I don't remember the last time I've hit record on my Sony camera. I literally just have it set to the video profile I have set up, and I hit record on Ecamm. So that obviously helps with not taking up space on that SD card or the overheating on the camera since it's not physically uh, recording to an internal SD card. So that helps with the longer videos that we do. Again, in Ecamm, there's a pause button and you can record locally, which all my videos I do, and then it just records to whatever folder you select on your computer, or you can save it to like a hard drive or whatever. But you can also live stream. Like this is a live streaming software, primarily built for that. But I don't live stream too much, so I just do the record only. So live streaming makes it so much easier because you can, like I said, do everything, all the editing and everything as you're live streaming. There's a comments box that pulls up, so all the comments you can see, and you can pick which ones you post on screen. You can obviously schedule that live stream, so makes it super easy. So you sit here and it counts down, and as soon as your live stream is set to go live, it goes live, and it's awesome. And it goes directly to YouTube. You can do one for Facebook. You can also use this for Zoom meetings, I think. So there's a whole lot of options, especially if you like to live stream. This is a good software to where you're controlling everything throughout the live stream and just makes it so much cooler. If you want to share a screen, doing interviews is nice. We've done a couple different interviews on my main podcast with guests that are in a different state. So you send them a link to your Ecamm live recording or live stream if you were doing a live stream. And then they just, on their laptop or their phone, click on that. And there's a little app that they kind of see things. They can mute themselves and do a couple other things. But then you can control your guest that you have on. You can add them on one screen, or you can do a split screen. You can change the different camera angles between you and the guest as it's going, which is really nice as well. You could put them back in what's called the green room if you want to put them on hold or something, and then bring them back on later. So much different thing that you can do on Ecamm Live. I swear this podcast is not sponsored by Ecamm Live or Rode in any way. It's just a lot of stuff on here that you can do that's very powerful. So that way you don't have to spend all that time doing post editing, which post editing, if you've ever done, can be really time consuming. And me, who still works a full-time job, runs a small business, plus has technically 2 YouTube channels, time is pretty crucial. So the less time I can spend editing and just recording videos or the podcast, the easier. So like my main podcast, we try and keep it to an hour. Sometimes we go over, but by the time I hit, in recording, all I have to do is I bring it into Final Cut Pro. I add a couple like subscribe buttons and stuff like that, maybe like an end screen, and that's pretty much it. I can cut up some parts if like I mess up or something where I don't want this part in there. But other than that, I don't do any editing to the video podcast once that's out there. Now with like, if I'm doing like a regular YouTube video, obviously I mess up way more. So I'll have everything going through Ecamm Live hooked up just as you're seeing it now. But anytime I mess up, I just kind of stop and then restart that section, and I can still make sure everything's good in frame and stuff like that. And I could pause if I needed to take a break, and then that way your stream isn't going so long. But typically if I'm doing like, say, a microphone review, I'll just leave the whole thing recording the entire time. Even if I mess up, I'll just kind of restart as many times as I need to. I'm really bad when I'm doing an actual video. I don't know why, but if I'm doing like, say, a microphone review, I'll have an hour of footage trying to record that main talking head point. And I normally edit it down anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes final product. So I mess up a lot. I don't know if it's the pressure of the video and on that specific product. I know I can't mess up. I have to get everything right. But a podcast, very little editing that I have to edit out versus like an actual like review video or a how-to video. Man, it takes me a long time to actually get those right. So a lot more editing that goes into those. But again, I like having Ecamm Live pulled up because I can monitor everything. I can now record my overhead camera simultaneously with my main camera. Whereas what I used to have to do for my overhead shots, on just normal YouTube videos is record directly to my iPhone. So I couldn't see what was being recorded on the overhead shot. Like I can be like, all right, it looks like it's okay on the phone, or I would mirror to my TV, but then there'd be a lag. So I could see what it kind of looks like through my TV, but there'd be a huge delay. And so I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm getting it right. But now, since you can actually plug it into the computer and add that as a B camera and Ecamm Live, even though I don't switch between the two cameras in the actual video that I'm recording, since it's recording that overhead camera separately the entire time, I just drop that in the Final Cut Pro and then just edit down to the shots that I need the overhead camera. And it's so much easier. That way I don't have to take my phone and try to airdrop, that hour-long footage to my computer. It takes forever. And now it's just going to be a game changer with this update that he did. So it's going to make my life a little bit easier. So if you're somebody that does overhead camera shots or just different angles, the update they did is definitely going to help now that you can record those cameras all separately. So that way you don't have to switch between the two within Ecamm to get that shot. So hopefully that makes sense. If you use Ecamm, you obviously know what I'm talking about. If you're not used Ecamm before, then, try it out. It's awesome. You can get a free trial. I'll post a link in the description below. I think if you click on it, you get either a certain percentage off or a certain time frame for a free trial. The free trials and like the lower tiers, you don't get quite all the options. I think the interview option is only in their top tier, the pro version. If you don't ever plan on doing interviews, then you might not need that option anyway. But if you get like the basic version, there's always a watermark in the top of the screen. You could probably cut that out in post editing. But if you need the full shot, that watermark is going to be up there. Just keep that in mind. And you're kind of limited on some other features. The Pro, even though it's $40, it's definitely something that makes my life easier in doing the production side of things. So definitely recommend at least trying it out. See if it's something that would help you. And if it does, awesome. So again, not a sponsored video, but click the link in the description below. If you do end up buying a subscription to it or anything like that, you'll kind of help the channel out as we get a small commission off that. But other than that, those are my two very long story longs of the two pieces of equipment, and I guess one piece of equipment and software program that make my video and audio production so much easier that it would be hard at this point to live without. Like I said, I used to not have these two things and did videos, and it's fine recording to an SD card on a camera, but it's hard to tell if you're in frame correctly or if it's in focus, because from where I'm sitting and where the camera is, I can see the LCD screen, but I can't really see what's going on within it. Like I can't tell if I'm in focus or anything. And then you run the risk of running out of memory. Camera can overheat that way, recording directly to that card. All sorts of different stuff. Ecamm Live just makes it so much easier. There's other programs out there that are similar, but don't have, I guess, the ease, because they make it so easy to use the program versus some other ones out there. It's just so user-friendly. It takes no time to kind of get the hang of it. At first, when you look at it, you're going to see all these different boxes that pop up, but once you figure out what they do, it's going to be awesome. And then you can close out different boxes and don't have to have everything showing on your screen if you don't want to. There's a lot of channels out there that do how-to videos. Ecamm Live even has their own YouTube channel, but they show you all the different settings depending on if you're doing record only, if you're going to stream to like YouTube, and it depends on if you're using, the Camlink 4K or if you're just doing a normal USB cord and doing 10K. Yeah, and then you can only if you don't want to mess with 4K and worry about uploading that because it does take a lot of memory and is a large file, you can just do 1080 or even 720 if you want to. So whole bunch of different things with Ecamm Live if you have a Mac. So I think to stop boring you guys, I will try it in this podcast here. I'm really hoping in the next one I do, I can use the Neat King Bee 2. Hopefully I either figure out what's going on with this one or have a replacement by then. So I know originally I said I was going to do these podcasts every other week, but it's more like once a month at this point, or just whenever I can, because I do that one main podcast where 60 episodes in. So we've done one every single week for over a year now. So that's kind of my main focus. Plus that channel, the regular videos over there. This is kind of my second channel. So I do the videos and podcast as I can do it. Kind of fun, trying to build up that subscribers and view counts and all that stuff. So I'm just going to do these videos and podcasts as I can. Hopefully a little bit more now. Since it's still winter, it's going to be a little bit harder when summer hits, and then you got to do yard work and all that stuff on top of everything else. But yeah. So if you guys have any questions or anything, let me know. Any questions on Ecamm Live or anything on the road, I'll post a link to both Rodecaster Pros in the description below. You can check them out on Amazon. Watch, Tom Buck's channel if you want to learn about the Rodecaster, if it's something on your radar or you want to see everything that they can do. I think he's got a video on kind of the comparison between the two. Like, well, if you got the one, do you need to upgrade to the second one? And that can help you if you want to save the money and get the first one. Totally fine. The only reason, like I said, I wanted to get the second one is to not have to use any gain boosters and really not have any noise in my headphones. So I get a clear sound of what it's going to sound like in the final production. So with that, yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. Any questions, again, let me know down in the comments. If you like the podcast, hit that subscribe and follow button on YouTube. Hit that, like button on the audio only version if there's one or whatever. But yeah, follow us on Spotify or whatever audio only platform you're listening to. Obviously, I did some visual stuff in here, but I didn't show every specific piece of equipment. I do want to do a tour of my studio setup video, which I'll probably do here soon, hopefully. So that way you kind of see how I have it set up and not just what I'm using, but how I have it specifically set up. But again, everything's changing. I'm always changing different things, but again, I digress. So thanks for tuning in this week, and I will catch you guys next time.